Hi, this is my presentation on characteristics of exemplary nurse leaders. One of the questions is, what characteristics does a good leader demonstrate? How does this type of leader relate to other clinical staff? A nurse leader will walk their nurse through a skill without judgment. That nurse will be able to do the skill without them. I think of an example with this as having many new graduates on it. Many times they will ask their charge nurse for them to place an IV if one of their patients needs one, and they kind of shy away from them instead of trying, possibly because of potential failure. And so a great characteristic would be if that charge nurse walks them through the IV placement and maybe gives them some tricks that they know how to place them better, so that in the future they can use those tricks and they can place the IV without asking for them to do the IV. The next one is, a nurse leader can communicate negative feedback in a way that the person does not feel like they're being attacked. All leaders are a little bit different, but it is important that when they have to give feedback that may come across as negative or something that the nurse did wrong, there's a way that it can be done constructively versus kind of destructively. Most nurses want to get things right on the first try, and they don't want to do things wrong. And so when the leader comes at them with something that they've done wrong, they tend to take it personally. So it's important to know how to communicate without the entire conversation being negative. A nurse leader encourages their staff to express their opinions openly without retaliation. Every nurse leader should have the ability to have like an open floor or open door policy with their staff, so that if their staff, they can come to them with them, text or call, or have a box or something, so that they have the ability to get their feedback or opinions across without feeling like that leader is going to come after them because of the way they feel. That's not a positive environment. That's not how things should go with a leader and nurse. A nurse leader succeeds when their nurses succeed. It is important that as a leader you take pride in the success of your nurses, and that when somebody fails, you fail. When they succeed, you succeed. It's about improving the unit, or improving the hospital, or improving that staff member more than it is important to improve themselves. Here's a quote by Y. Kawasaki. Leadership is a privilege to better the lives of others. It is not an opportunity to satisfy personal goals. Behaviors associated with effective leadership. I broke these down into verbal and nonverbal communication cues, because I feel like when you're leading somebody, your staff is listening to you as well as looking at what you have to say. So on verbal communication, I pulled a little sentence from effective communication. A leader's job is to move people from where they currently are to where they need to be in order to create a more innovative and productive organization, which is typically accomplished through verbal communication. As a leader communicates vision, purpose, and direction during a meeting. I think of this as something that we do at the beginning of each of our shifts. The charge nurse goes over our mission, vision, and values for the hospital, and it's important that the charge nurse doesn't actually just read it to them. They actually involve the staff and have them read it back to the charge nurse. That way, everybody's involved and everybody understands what the unit's mission, vision, and values are. Choose to be positive when speaking to coworkers. It is important to be positive when change and new processes are being implemented. It's common for a new process to be started within a unit, and your initial thought is, oh, this is going to be horrible. The unit that I work on currently, we have to go down to the emergency room and pick up our code stroke patients and bring them to the unit. And initially, everybody thought, oh, this is going to be horrible because we're going to have to take 2 people off the unit, go down and get the patient. So a lot of negative feedback was happening, and it was feedback between the nurses, and it made kind of a negative environment overall, and the process was negative from the beginning. It took a lot for the charge nurses to explain positively why this is great for the unit. You can go down and do your NIH stroke scale with the ER nurse so that you know what score they're at baseline. Coming into the hospital, you get a better report. It just took some more information explained to the nurses from the leadership team in a positive way for them to kind of change their immediate initial reaction to it. A great nurse leader manages up other leaders and staffs, never talks poorly, because when you talk poorly, it will break down your team. This can be your manager to director, director to CEO, nurse to charge nurse. It's important that anytime you speak about that other person, you compliment their positive attributes. Even you can have a nurse leader that maybe always comes in mad or upset, and so you would label that person as being grumpy. Oh, well, she's here today, she's always grumpy. No, maybe she starts the shift grumpy, but she's always one to get down and do her work great, and excels at everything that she does. So instead of harping on the grumpy part of the start of their day, maybe they have a hard time leaving their kids, or their car has no air conditioner, something that might make them be upset at the beginning of the shift. Instead of harping on those negatives for that person, you could say, oh, well, she's a hard worker. She always gets her work done. Managing up other staff members, including physicians, nurse practitioners, pharmacists, anybody that you speak to, even if there's something negative, always the positives as the front of the conversation when speaking about that person. It makes your patients who hear you speak about those other people feel like they're in great hands, and the nurses feel like they have great staff that they're working with, and so it just makes the whole team have a better positive outlook. If you start talking poorly about people, then your team will break down. The other side of verbal communication is nonverbal communication. Another quote would be, some researchers have shown that nonverbal communication plays a much larger role than verbal communication. One of the things that I think of most is never cross your arms over your body when having a conversation with someone. Have your hands open to have your hands down to your side or open. This makes the conversation seem like you're not closed off from it, that you're engaged in speaking with them. Never choose to sit down at the desk when other staff are still busy. Always be available and offer to help. Don't be the first one to sit down if somebody seems to have several patients left that they're running around and passing meds or getting water or doing things that something's causing them to be be behind, you can offer to get that water for them, or offer to take that patient to the bathroom, or offer to give those meds. Everybody will have a chance to maybe sit down and chart after all the tasks are done. If it's possible, then it's important to help everybody get through those tasks. Another quote by Phil Owens: "Actions, not words, are the ultimate results of leadership." How is nursing leadership a dynamic, interactive process? I broke it down over 3 different nursing leadership styles: transformational leadership, transactional leadership, and dynamic leadership. Transformational leadership is a style that allows nurses to take an active role in evaluating, establishing, and changing policies. Transactional leadership: with this style of nursing leadership, the nurse manager only interacts with her employees when something needs to be done or when something is wrong. Dynamic leadership: the dynamic leadership style uses the idea that the relationship between the leader and the nurse is ever changing. Both parties are absolutely essential to the success of the entire nursing unit. This is the slide continued. I feel that nursing leadership is dynamic because it requires you to implement several different types of leadership styles. You may need to change your leadership style with different employees based on which style each employee is most receptive to. Leadership in nursing is unique because every nurse on the unit, including the leader, has one credential in common: they are all registered nurses. By John C. Maxwell: "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." How can nurses demonstrate leadership in contemporary healthcare? Nurses have a voice. They're able to voice their opinions and make change happen. Nurses have evidence-based practice. If there is a process or practice that can be improved, nurses can test their theory and show why it is better using evidence-based practice. Nurses are educators. Nurses become preceptors to new nurses and become clinical educators for nursing staff. Nurses drive patient care. Nurses collaborate with patients, providers, case management, therapy staff, and patient families to achieve the best possible outcome for each patient. Nurses have continuing education. It is a requirement for most facilities for nurses to have several hours of education each year. This is so important that their staff can stay current with changes. I feel like for all of these reasons, a nurse can demonstrate leadership in the contemporary healthcare setting. Quote by Mitt Romney: "Leadership is about taking responsibility, not making excuses." My references. Thank you for listening to my presentation.